Sanctum Showdown is probably my favorite way to play Marvel Snap, and it's back from October 15th through the 22nd. You can get a brand new Series 4 card in it for free just by playing. Today's video is going to walk you through the basics of how this game mode is different from regular Snap. We're going to talk about which cards are banned from the Snap card pool, and then give you 7 deck lists to give you a jump start on racking up those wins. Like all game modes in Marvel Snap, Sanctum Showdown is played out over 3 locations on the board where you're adding points to them, but unlike a regular game of Marvel Snap, it's not just the last turn of the game that matters. During each of the turns, you're going to see little green numbers appear on each of the locations. Starting on turn 3, one location will be worth 4 points and the others are each worth 1. And then at the end of the turn, who's ever winning at each of the locations gets the points there, with the first person reaching 16 points or more being the winner of the game. Sometimes this can happen as early as turn 5, meaning the game lasts is shorter than a regular game of Snap, but sometimes it can last 7 or even 8 turns while things slowly build up. There's also still a snapping mechanic, with each turn players being able to snap to increase the 4-point location to 5 or 6 if both players snap, making it for a total of up to 8 points being collected in a single round. This means that playing to the board early is really important in Sanctum Showdown. Cards like Squirrel Girl, Black Cat, and Hydra Bob that put points on the board quick are some of the better cards you can be playing here. The core idea of this game mode does lead to some regular Marvel Snap cards either being really strong or, in some cases like Dracula, completely useless. So there is a list of banned cards that you're not allowed to play. If you're familiar with Sanctum Showdown from previous times it's run, there are 5 new additions to the ban list this time around. We have Cull Obsidian, Gamora, Rocket Raccoon, Suitor, and Werewolf by Night joining the list of banned cards that largely consist of things that clog up the board, things that can add extra turns to the game like Magic, or move the Sanctum location around like Quake. I think overall these bans make a lot of sense. Werewolf by Night was really dominating the last time Showdown was around, and anybody who's played it before knows that the Guardian of the Galaxies had run the show the last couple of times, and I like that they didn't gut all of the Guardians, but instead just chose to remove the most efficient ones. Rocket Raccoon and Gamora were definitely ones we saw splashed in the most things, while leaving characters like Star-Lord, Groot, and Drax that are a little bit weaker still legal to be played in this game mode, and likely still playable because of how playing to specific locations becomes key. While Guardians of the Galaxy were easily the most popular decks in our previous iterations of Sanctum Showdown, by the time the event was over both times, various versions of Khazar's Zoo were actually among the best performing. I think it's easy to see why. This deck list has so many great ways to put stats on the board early, especially with things like Squirrel Girl, and effects like Khazar and Blue Marvel mean that you can get extra points into locations that you otherwise filled up. This lets you play for those 4 and 5 point Sanctum locations aggressively early and still have the ability to potentially contest them more later after the fact if they rotate back around before you're able to get those full 16 points to close the game out. Probably my personal favorite deck the last couple of times Sanctum Showdown has run is the Bass Spice Rack variation. This archetype has some cheap cards that play to the board early well. Things like Agent Venom and Cassandra Nova give you nice stats to start, and then you have scaling threats like Thena and Havoc that can get on the board early and then start growing up to keep those lanes competitive even as the game matures. Sanctum Showdown is one of the few places where you can afford to slam a Havoc as early as turn 3 because its scaling stats are going to make it so you can go ahead and get those points early, meaning the fact that you don't have extra energy later is a lot less relevant. As archetype also gets to cleanly play incredibly disruptive cards like Red Guardian and Cosmo to be able to both break up whatever your opponent has going on and protect your own scaling threats from interaction like Shadow King and Shang-Chi. Sauron Scar was another one of our top performers from our previous Sanctum Showdown metagames. However, it did lose Suitor as one of its potential 3 energy enablers. That being said, I would wager this archetype still has plenty of staying power. You have a ton of high power, low energy cards. Sauron, Zero, Black Cat, Ebony Maw, and Lizard are going to give you commanding leads in terms of overall Sanctum points early, and then you're going to be able to convert that into game wins with your various 4 10s or 12s in the case of Ares, enabling enabling a Scar to get super cheap. You top off this deadly mix with a mixture of Potent Interaction, Enchantress, and Shadow King, allowing you to break up whatever your opponent has going on their side of the board. Enchantress is particularly good in this game mode where Zoo is popular and has lots of ongoing bonuses. One common theme you're probably starting to notice between these successful Sanctum decks that's present in this one as well is the ability to add additional points to lanes that are otherwise filled up, in addition to Victoria Hand letting you add points of power to created cards in a full path. This deck list is also applying Mr. Fantastic to reach his hands in and add 3 points of power to the left and right side, allowing you to contest that Sanctum when your opponent's least expecting it. We combined these two ongoing power-ups with Moonstone, allowing us to generate big boosts that are often unpredictable. This deck list, similar to the last one, gets to mix in these efficient stats with a dash of disruption in the form of Shadow King, allowing you to keep up with things like Thena and Havoc out of the Spice Rack decks. If you're someone who's not interested in locking yourself into a particular location and instead want to chase that Sanctum spot around the board every single turn, Movement has been a consistently good performing deck inside of Sanctum Showdown. Things like Madam Web and Ghost Spider are absolutely excellent tools for allowing you to drag your biggest stat sticks around the board, so that way your main points are showing up wherever is worth the most Sanctum points turn in and turn out. One fun twist this game mode brings is that otherwise limp move enablers like Fanfei become more relevant here, since they're not only being a move enabler for you, but they're also putting meaningful stats onto the board with their own body. If you're a Destroy enabler, this archetype can also keep up in Sanctum Showdown, but there are some key differences between the stock meta ladder Destroy deck and this one that I think are worth calling out. Notably, the inclusion of cards like Uncle Ben and Bucky Barnes are really important in the Sanctum Showdown mode because they get you stats on the board early to help you contest that location. Specifically, this deck list is not playing Deadpool as a card because he's one that generates a big flourish at the end of a regular game of Marvel Snap and doesn't build up incidental points on the board while you're doing that, making him much worse for the tempo-suited gameplay of Sanctum Showdown. Another upside this archetype has that's getting to play Killmonger as an enabler of its own, which allows you to be something of a natural predator into the Zoo decks that are likely to be popular. My last deck recommendation today is Ajax Afflict. This archetype has reasonable stats that it can put on the board early, but one particular card I want to call out as one that's consistently good in Sanctum Showdown is the Man-Thing as an enabler. Because so many decks are looking to play cheap cards to the board early, Man-Thing, especially if you pair it with Luke Cage or an otherwise empty location on your side of the board, is often worth well into the double-digit points worth of stats for just 4 energy, often commanding wins at the Sanctum all on its own. You pair this with Ajax in another lane, and so long as your opponent doesn't get to snowball an early advantage, this deck list can absolutely dominate most of the common decks in this mode on turns 5, 6, and even 7. If you want to see new deck ideas that I'm going to be brewing up for Sanctum Showdown, be sure to drop by my live stream at twitch.tv/Jeff Hoagland, where we're going to be playing a ton of this mode while it's live. The very tempo-focused gameplay that it brings to Marvel Snap is some that I absolutely love, and I'm excited to see how it ends up looking with fewer Guardians and Werewolf no longer jumping around the board. The Hunger seems like a card that I'm likely to play a good bit of as well. I would wager not only is it good with our current Season Pass card, Zombie Scarlet Witch, making her horde bigger and triggering her without taking up a spot in her location, but it's essentially a 1/3, which is a relatively playable stat line that we can play inside of decks with Werewolf by Night inside of regular Marvel Snap, since on-reveal skills are so efficient at allowing it to jump around the board, especially into spots that are otherwise full up. Do you have any sweet deck ideas for Sanctum? Maybe you're leveraging some of the more recent cards that I should consider playing. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want a data-driven approach to what's finding success in this metagame format for a limited time game mode as we head into the weekend, make sure you're subscribed to the channel here, because I'll have my typical data-driven best decks roundup going up later this weekend. As always, I appreciate everybody that made it all the way through to the end of the video. If you enjoyed my roundup, make sure you smash that like button. Hope your next snap pack is an excellent one. Stay safe out there, people.